Besides such well-known figures as Professor Nasser and Professor Chittick, the conference also featured a number of younger teachers and writers who share the same perspective. They presented shorter talks in a panel setting. The first of these was Dr. Maria Massi Dakake, Associate Professor of Religious Studies at George Mason University in Fairfax, Virginia. Her talk illustrated the traditionalist inclination to look beyond superficial oppositions such as male and female in order to find deeper, spiritually significant insights that can help us in understanding doctrines and stories given in the scriptures.
My talk is about the heritage of female spirituality from a traditionalist perspective. If we look at all of the major civilizations of the world, we see in every case that it is men, in the narrow sense of male human beings, who are the predominant holders of religious authority and the primary expositors of theological and legal teachings. Even within the esoteric and mystical dimension of these religions, where we often find much greater female presence, it is still men who account for most of its major figures. And certainly the traditional societies that developed on the basis of these different religious foundations reflected the normative and exoteric structure of male authority, with women playing an essential but hierarchically subordinate role. Yet at the same time, no major religious civilization is devoid of important examples of female sanctity or even charismatic authority and spiritual mastery. Moreover, all of the religions posit, in various modes and to varying degrees, some notion of the presence and origin of the feminine principle within the nature of the divine or the absolute itself. From the perspective of Judeo-Christian and Islamic religious traditions, which I will focus on today, God is the creator of gender. He is therefore the source of all masculinity and all femininity, while also transcending the distinction altogether. The Quran tells us that God created all things in pairs, azwajin. God alone is one. But both the Judeo-Christian and the Islamic traditions assert that man, in the larger sense, was made in the image of God. Therefore, human beings should logically be capable of reflecting not only the various masculine and feminine elements of God's nature, but at least potentially something of his oneness and his unity. If God transcends gender, then human beings, in a spiritually perfected or ideal form, must transcend it also. Indeed, this original oneness or wholeness is expressed in the Quranic verses describing God's creation of humanity, where it says that God created human beings from a single soul, and from it created its mate, and from the two has spread abroad a multitude of men and women. A single soul split into two, and from this two derives all of human multiplicity. But the multiplicity reflects the duality. It is a multitude of men and women. And the duality must also reflect the unity. But how is this duality resolved? How is it overcome, even if only virtually? And how can the pieces of this metaphorical mirror, that is the human soul, be restored to one another perfectly enough to offer a true reflection of the original oneness? The traditionalist perspective, like all traditional religious perspectives, assigns real significance to the gender dichotomy and views masculinity and femininity as meaningful and sublimely symbolic realities that actually correspond to all of the spiritually meaningful realities in the cosmos: justice and mercy, mathematics and music, rigorous order, and the inexorable profusion of life, as well as to the different ways in which God can be envisioned in relation to humanity, as both transcendent and immanent, both absolute and infinite. When these two realities are brought together and held in balance, they create a harmony that imparts both truth and beauty. In the human realm, masculinity and femininity are brought together macrocosmically through the respective and differentiated masculine and feminine roles in and contributions to human society, and microcosmically through the union realized in human marriage. Traditionalist authors, and Frithjof Schuon most significantly, have written much on the spiritual meaning of masculinity and femininity. Schuon explains the relationship between these two as existing on multiple levels, with various modalities, something that he offers in response to what he has described as an excessively unilateral approach to the relations between the genders in other circles. The first level of the male-female relationship, he writes, is the sexual, biological, psychological, and social relationship, wherein he observes there is a natural and inescapable inequality. The second is the simply human fraternal relationship, wherein there is a foundational equality between men and women as equally representative of all humanity. Thirdly, there is the spiritual or sacred relationship, in which Schuon states that there is a highly paradoxical reciprocal superiority. For in love, woman assumes in regard to her husband a divine function, as does man in regard to woman, as we can see in the importance of the uniting of the male and the female. All of these relationships, however, regardless of the issue of equality or inequality, require the distinct nature of the genders. They presuppose an inherent and fixed distinction between them, and they consider human wholeness to be achieved virtually insofar as each gender is completed by the other. Indeed, the distinct quality and nature of the genders is, for Frithjof Schuon, essential to the ontological relationship between them, and possesses an existential logic, and I'm quoting here, which the spirit may transcend inwardly, but cannot abolish outwardly.